Faust might be having a harder time than usual, but she's proving herself to be no village idiot. Well, not even Heathcliff is, but okay, getting off topic. Dante found something after another round of brutal combat. It caught their attention. Gregor noticed a box in a small alcove at the final car adjacent to the freight car. They saw within this a box within this alcove has the T-Corp logo on it. Don Quixote certainly recognized it. Yi Sang pointed out that during their battle, the wall that was covering that box was broken. Roger asked if Chief Executive Hubert mentioned that T-Corp partnered with other wings. Clearly W Corp was one of them. Yi Sang told her that T-Corp doesn't have a monopoly with that. Wings have been known to work with others, if it serves their interests. Okay, they don't know this, but Lobotomy Corporation worked with at least K, R, T, and W Corp. They did so for 10 years to complete the Seed of Light projects. Well, give or take. K Corp for the HP bullets, R Corp for hiring the Rabbit team to deal with the more difficult situations, T Corp for manipulating time, and W Corp to get the Rabbit team where they needed to be within the facility. It's possible that the SP bullets were made by M Corp, as they deal with mind-healing moonstones, and have a focus towards mental health, considering that they operate a loony bin. Yi Sang pointed out that only on rare occasions that less significant corporations are hired for assistance, such as Limbus Company, seeing their choice as quite irregular. Roger noticing that W Corp is not what it was and has grown desperate, considering who they hired, considering that the wall was falling apart. Then she quickly changed the subject to point out how messed up the room was. It was difficult for Dante to ignore this. Roger was noticing this as if she was making a mistake. Massault observed the various destroyed prosthetic parts covered in human remains. This indicated that the train car that they were in was boarded by prosthetic-equipped fixers. The multi-crack office. Dante didn't want to focus on that. They had a job to do. Ishmael remembered that they were from the same office as the one that they met on the platform. They warped over to District 20 on an expedition. They were wearing standardized sets of prosthetics. Same make, same model. Don Quixote remembered articles that stated that some offices exclusively hire fixers with prosthetics. Sinclair wasn't feeling good about hearing about that, considering that his family owned a prosthetics factory and were killed for replacing their bodies with prosthetics. That, and he saw something awful. It was a prosthetic fixer that was strung up in a gruesome fashion. Don Quixote recognizing them as the one that they encountered on the platform. Brutus remembered that he suddenly vented at them. Gregor added that he went to District 20 on an expedition and failed, buying a whole train car full of fixers for that contract. Well, hiring them, to be more exact. And seeing this is not an exaggeration. Don Quixote observed a dozen broken arms strewn about, as they clearly, They clearly didn't give up without a fight as they replaced their broken arms with backups. Dante saw this as making sense. It would at least explain the broken prosthetic arms and legs scattered in that train car. Otis told them that this was likely the aftermath of a battle between the Fixers and Bloodbags. She saw many similar cases during the war. Likely the Smoke War, the same war that Gregor was conscripted into. She mentioned that those using prosthetics let their bodies be destroyed in battle because they were considered to be disposable, as long as their wallets would permit. This lack of self-preservation can be a fast route to their graves. Dante saw her point regarding that. Faust could see multiple possible interpretations depending on one's perspective from this single scene. Remembering both their inputs, Otis saw this as a good attitude. People like her often made it to the end, as in those that understand that caution is sometimes necessary, and that it's unwise to fight a battle where they know they can't win. A certainty rather than a possibility. Faust saw this as good for them. Not looking particularly bothered. This snappy response was uncharacteristic for her. Fatigue was creeping in. This concerned Dante, asking if she's alright. Faust was physically unharmed, but emotionally, she didn't like the situation. Casting nets to nowhere and isolated in the blind sea. Usually she could complete her deductions within moments after a few cross-references between the accessible information. The second half of that was whispered. Ishmael, the former sailor, could understand the first half. As she knew that feeling, doing so on a rippleless lake in the desperate hopes that one of these nets might pull in something edible, without a way of knowing where they were, grasping at straws. Yisang saw this, sense that, he found mired. The sense that he was mired in something was not unlike her own. He felt that, like he was lying on his back over an unseen grave, for the reflection of radiance upon his eyes and the sanguine scent hanging from the tip of his nose told him nothing of the road ahead. Dante saw them as words of consolation. Ishmael didn't recall her talking like that. She noticed something different about Faust that day. Faust was about to say something, then Ishmael told her that she didn't hate it. She was glad to learn that she had a softer side. Yisang saw this as quite fresh, if unfamiliar. Faust asked if that was so. Then Masot brought their attention back to their mission, which, based on the pamphlets at the platform, that train is composed of 12 passenger cars and 1 freight car. They're in the 11th passenger car right now, so only 1 car remains between them and the freight car where Mephistopheles is secured. Dante understood what this meant. Masot completed that thought by saying that they'll encounter the Blood Fiend responsible for the creation of the blood bags aboard that train. Dante understood that the Blood Fiend was beyond that door. Heathcliff didn't see how impressive that the Blood Fiend could be if the blood bags were that weak. They had no problem smashing through them. Masot understood better. The Blood Fiend is able to command a force as large as that, and so is high risk. Faust understood that while it's not common knowledge, but there are fixers that specialize in hunting blood fiends. Yes, there are blood fiend hunters, as they're difficult foes that require certain expertise to defeat. Honglu saw that if blood bags are mindless thralls to blood fiends, then they're kind of like a private army of theirs. Brutus saw a being of power that can create a force of their own without concern for lowered morale or desertion. Wartime or not, that makes them formidable foes. They were each preparing for the battle ahead. Then Don Quixote was angered by this indecision. They're about to defeat the villain who brought pain and misery aboard that train. More so than the usual kind that happens there. They might be vaporizing the blood of the innocent as they speak. It doesn't matter how strong they are. She'll smite the enemy, delivering the hand of justice as the judge of them. They need to get on with it. Dante saw her as not wrong, as they need to deal with the Blood Fiend to complete their contract. They opened the door leading to the final car of that train. As for that T-Corp box, its purpose, as mentioned by Ji-hyun, the puppeteer, is to extract centuries worth of time to utilize later, which is why no one on board the warp train was dying of thirst, hunger, or injury. As Dante and the others entered the final economy class cabin, they found themselves in a throne room of sorts, with the Blood Fiend asking what was with the look on their faces. They stand in the audience of a prince. Where the subservient smiles? Faust identified him as the Blood Fiend that caused their outbreak. The outbreak within that warp train. Their targets. He demanded that they kneel and grovel before royalty. Gregor asked him who was he to make such demands. The Blood Fiend told him to listen well, as he'll say this once, and once only. He is Prince Cassetti, 6th Kindred, or Kindred of the 6th generation, the rightful prince in a refuge from his family. So he's fallen from favor. As for Cassetti in the source material, specifically Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie, that was the true name of one of the characters, an American gangster and a child killer. A loose reference, I know. And as for the term kindred in this context, it's likely a reference to the World of Darkness universe, specifically Vampire the Masquerade, where humans are seen as cattle by vampires, where the earlier the generation, the stronger they are. Don't know how they got away with that legally. Don Quixote saw him as the villain that brought destruction and massacre upon the warp train. And yes, Cassetti speaks in the same way as Don Quixote does. Cassetti saw her as chatty and rude, yet he's feeling generous, as he's quite sated at that time. That place is a banquet, full of the most majestic feast. Yes, quite the banquet hall. As no matter how many blood bags he created, no matter how much he devoured them, the humans just wouldn't stop coming. Yi Sang saw that he cast a mask for the purpose of merrymaking. Otis told him to take the mask off, or is he unfamiliar with basic etiquettes? Cassetti then responded to their attention towards his mask, telling them that he couldn't take it off even if he wanted to. Seeing there being no prince without the mask, he sees himself as ugly without it. It's hiding and repulsive. he's become. It'll go back to how it used to be once he's drank their blood. Only then can he unmask himself. We usually didn't see it as a half-bad job, considering that the mask was stitched to his face. Cassetti approved of this compliment. The mask was crafted by the barber, whose name he dare not speak, even though the mask hurt so much. He then told them that he's smiling and laughing manically, as if he just drank a shot of Joker toxin. Heathcliff could clearly tell that he's insane. He's had enough of his giggles. Time for the fighting! Surprisingly, Cassetti didn't take this personally, enjoying things like Heathcliff and his friends. They don't cry and beg for their lives. He loves the fire of aggression and boiling blood. Heathcliff saw him as ridiculous, as there's 13 of them and one of him. Faust warned him to not let his guard down, as he's turned most of the passengers into blood bags. He argued against her, saying that he's not letting his guard down, but they've blasted through so many blood bags that they couldn't keep count. Cassetti saw the count as so important. He has to do that to keep track of all his visitors, warning him that he has no idea how powerful he is. He won't relinquish his throne to them, the throne of his budding kingdom. All he has to do is sit there and do nothing, and the blood bags present themselves before him. It's a paradise to him. They have no idea what he did to create that place. He sounds like a typical CEO, although not so literally as this. He saw how older kindreds would be, should they witness what he created. Abundance, pleasure, and freedom. The kingdom he was in was his. He made it, and he won't give it away. Faust saw this as rather curious. Cassetti only left his car on rare occasions, yet his influence was felt throughout every car, except first class, that they visited so far. Hong Lu then realized that what he meant by how the blood bags present themselves before him has to be. Then Sasha ran towards them, telling them to hold it. This caught Cassetti off guard. This made him shrink it back into his throne in terror. Don Quixote was glad to see Sasha, asking if she's there to assist them. The blood fiend before them was responsible for what was going on in that train, encouraging Sasha to help them slay Cassetti and lead those that she protected out of that train. Faust then remembered something about blood fiends. Understanding that there might be more than one blood fiend on board, one still capable of rational thoughts. Sasha was surprised that they've made it this far. The Wings clearly don't just give out contracts to just about anyone. She used to fight at her best, until she was the last one standing. Rodia wanted to know what Sasha was talking about. Sasha continued by asking, where did that leave her in the end? She stood alone with nothing but a single set of forearms left. Her perspective on life flipped when she was in deep. Her last thoughts were, man, I don't want to die. Dante could see where this was going. Sasha then fell on her knees and pleaded, telling Cassetti that. Then Faust warned Don Quixote to watch out, as Sasha told them that she'd do anything to live. Blood was rapidly crystallizing around Sasha like a suit of armor, as she swung her greatsword at them, striking at them, even before Faust finished her sentence. This caught both Heathcliff and Cassetti by surprise, the latter shouting at Sasha that he commanded her to give him warning before jumping in like that. asking if she knows how loud her stupid arms were. He thought that his family had come for him. Sasha apologized to Lord Cassetti, revealing herself to be a blood fiend herself. A seventh kindred? Cassetti revealed that Sasha is the first of many since his escape from his family, for the kingdom that he intended to build, his loyal squire as he built a dynasty of his own family. Sasha then told him that she had intended to select the more powerful of them to send there, as he commanded. But those in her car were all weaklings. So she presented before him the group from the first class car. Faust asked if Sasha was aware of the exact nature of a kindred. She didn't. But when she accepted Cassetti's blood in her veins, she felt as if she was reborn. Faust saw a kindred as a sub-entity of a blood fiend, like those created by distortions or abnormalities, understanding that Sasha was driven to desperation to accept that proposition without hesitation, despite lacking relevant info. Sasha didn't deny that it was out of desperation before it happened. This disappointed Don Quixote, as Sasha was with Cassetti as his lapdog, with that villain from before they met. Sasha freaked out when she was asked about red eyes. Not that it would matter that much, as her red eye was a prosthetic. Then Don Quixote had a disturbing realization, as the passengers under her protection. Cassetti reminded them that the count mattered. The longer the line, the better. Then blood bags walked into that train car. All that was being protected by Sasha, including a smaller one. Dante remembered the child that grabbed onto Don Quixote's coattails. Dante realized that the passengers' fates were sealed the moment that they realized that Sasha was a blood fiend. But they hoped that they didn't have to face that reality. Not like that. This hit Don Quixote harder. She remembered that there was a child. Sasha did as well. She wanted to be a fixer when she grew up, seeing it as a good thing that she went. Seeing living as a blood bag is way better than the life of a fixer, which is pure drudgery. Don Quixote telling Sasha to hold her tongue. Sasha mocks that little girl's dream of becoming a famous, respected fixer and enactor of justice, seeing it as a stupid pipe dream that either ends in crushing disappointment or an early grave. Yeah, it's rare for someone to be, someone that is a fixer to be neither of those. Don Quixote was enraged by this, basically telling Sasha to shut it, not letting Sasha continue, charging at full speed at her with her lance. The battle with the blood bags that used to be the passengers that they encountered earlier, they were easy enough to deal with. But as their numbers dwindled, Sasha and other multi-crack fixers that became blood bags was forced to intervene, personally. But even with her might, she was unable to withstand the might of the damned dozen. Cassetti was disappointed by his first kindred to be created without their authorization, like the older blood fiends, seeing her as a bumbling fool. Sasha prayed for his forgiveness. She at least brought him some blood bags for sustenance, seeing it as the responsibility of the parent to clear up after the child's mess. As he saw it, Ryushi saw this as a load of Cassetti reached out towards the pile of blood bags on the ground and, with the power of anime, he had a mask and a halberd made from crystallized blood that he made using the power of blood manipulation. As he swung his weapon, he remarked on how he had nearly forgotten the sensation of abundance. His armor of hardened blood made him not just more durable, but his aggression and hatred was also amplified. It made the others skin crawl. Faust observed that he empowered himself by reaping their blood. Cassetti noted that while his full power has yet to fully return, his armor was quite fitting for a prince that had become a king, asking if they agreed, believing that they did in advance, and provoking the rebels into challenging their king. They then fought against this empowered blood fiend, who did all that he could to make his foes bleed, and even heal from draining their blood, if they weren't able to dodge. They gave it their all, and they seemed to have defeated the sanguinetic distortion, but it turned out to be not that simple. Cassetti was feeling a noticeable amount of agony. Although he appeared masochistic, loving their boiling blood, it was more pain than he would actually like. Gregor noticed that he kept regenerating, no matter how many times they tore him apart. So stronger blood fiends have a healing factor. Sinclair was barely remaining conscious. Dante noticed that Gregor and Sinclair were suffering from mental fatigue. It wasn't long before they collapsed. It appears that the T-Corp time siphoning tech helped with Cassetti's regenerative capabilities. The battle was one of attrition. It was much longer than the one at the K-Corp checkpoint or against the Wild Hunt at the basement of Wuthering Heights. Even though the Damned Dozen were much stronger now, this was still their breaking point. Don Quixote had a strong determination to pummel Cassetti with her lance, but he was regenerating as fast as she was tearing into him. This made Cassetti hungry. Don Quixote saw this as ridiculous. His hunger was no excuse for this massacre. Cassetti told her to shut up, as she wouldn't understand how awful it is to survive for 2 centuries on that disgusting, horrible... Then he stopped himself, not wanting to think about that. He implied that he was imprisoned and fed in a way that would make death seem merciful, and he somehow broke out of his prison. Okay, now, this implies that blood fiends can live for more than 200 years, as he's at least that old, possibly more. This brief reminder of his past was enough to give him PTSD flashbacks, telling someone that he'll be quiet, he'll be good, begging for even the smallest sip. Then he was snapped back to reality by her stabbing him with her lance, telling her that it won't matter how many times she does this. She angrily told him that she won't stop until his flesh, bones, and organs were crushed into a viscous, shapeless mush, never to become whole again. Good luck with that, as he has a healing factor that would outdo Wolverine's. Dante saw that they had no chance of winning this battle. Cassetti then called Sasha. He gave her new life, inviting her to the banquets. She needs to fulfill her responsibilities. The blessings must be repaid. Sasha asked what could she do. Cassetti told her to find their weakness, break their anchor, to make them kneel and grovel before him in desperation, just like she did. Sasha thought about it, and then had an idea. She was surprised by this sudden command. She observed that the way they fought was like how she and her office fought, except without their kind of, prosthetics. Faust was concerned about this. Sasha continued by saying that prosthetic fixers slowly lose their sense of self-preservation. Yes, self-preservation was low with them, as their limbs became no more important than tools to be replaced. The damned dozen acted much like them, with such abandon, as if they had multiple lives to burn through. That's because they do have multiple lives to burn through. Dante was likely worried that they'll be targeted as the source of their forces coming back. Sasha knew that with nothing to protect, they'll throw themselves wildly into battle like moths to a flame. She was amused that they forgot to look after what's really important, like... And then Sasha revealed in one of her remaining arms the master keycard. So she has enough control over her arms to be a pickpocket. This was a problem, and Faust knew it, ordering Don Quixote to stop Sasha. Sadly, Don Quixote was unable to prevent Sasha from delivering the master keycard to Cassetti. Yes, this is despite her leaping at Sasha. Although it was also due to Sasha striking Don Quixote with one of her arms. Ishmael and Masold, who were holding Cassetti down, were no match for his strength without Don Quixote stabbing him. He threw both to the side and grabbed the keycard. Sasha proclaimed that with that keycard, he could access the first-class cars and grow his army of blood bags to bring glory to his kingdom. Dante thought that things were getting worse as Cassetti was examining the master keycard. Without that, they're trapped inside the warp train for centuries, until it reaches District 16. Faust then talked to Dante that she tried to overcome that adversity without success to the Faust network's knowledge, and the boost to her intelligence. With the loss of the master keycard, things are growing dire. And considering the origin of their plight, she took a deep breath, as if she was about to deal with the source of the issue, which might be her over-reliance on the Faust network. Dante understood that she received information from the Faust network. She was unfamiliar with making decisions on her own. They saw Faust as admirable even without that network. Dante agreed that they've been over-relying on that perfect Faust. She's been able to give good directions to follow after analysing the information available there. Even without that network, she was still able to do that. Faust was silent. Dante saw that uncertainty itself doesn't have to be a problem for them, reminding her that a lack of a plan itself can become the plan. Faust admitted that she believed in uncertainty. Their loss of the keycard is just one of the uncertain variables in the equation. The constant is that Cassetti is just as desperate as them. Their only option at present is it's to compromise. Then Cassetti brought his attention to Dante, who understands that they've been the one regenerating the others, telling them to stop doing this or he'll smash the master keycard to pieces. Don Quixote was horrified at the idea of what Dante was considering. Compromise? With a villain as vile as Cassetti? Dante didn't have time to regenerate Don Quixote's injuries. And the others. Well, the others besides Faust were still out cold. Faust was the last one to be revived before Dante was forced to stop. And Dante said, "Let's do that," and Faust agreed, requesting that they move the conversation to a different location. Only she and Dante will accompany him to the negotiation. She made it clear that neither of them will attack him there. Dante understood that despite his healing factor, he was completely exhausted by the unending barrage of attacks from Don Quixote and the others. This must have been an appealing suggestion to him. Cassetti was briefly nervous about it being just then, and Faust told him that the freight car is immediately adjacent to the one that they were on. It's where they'll discuss what's they have to offer to each other. Cassetti saw Dante as the monarch, and she's one of their retainers. Faust confirmed this. Cassetti saw this as a royal debate. Yes, a royal debate, and he'll talk to none but his equal. Don Quixote didn't believe that Dante was willing to negotiate with Cassetti by the tone of her voice. Dante told her that they'll be back quickly. Dante left the incapacitated and Don Quixote, who had hollow and despondent eyes as they walked away. Dante, Faust, and Cassetti made their way into the freight car. Dante asked Faust what they were doing, or rather why they were doing this in the freight car. According to Faust, this is her first attempt at a gamble. This was shocking to Dante, and with that, the door behind them closed shut. Dante commented that the passageway that they went through led to Mephistopheles. Cassetti then spoke of it all starting there. That bus that he was in woke him up, regretting that it filled that freight car. He wasn't planning to start his parade so soon or create a kindred there. Faust then talked to Dante, and this got their attention. Faust's connection to her network has been restored, likely because Mephistopheles has a connection to their home dimension, and can connect to other universes, likely via the mirror device. So of course it has a booster that can reconnect her, increasing the possibility that she has some kind of implant that has some form of wireless connection. This surprised and confused Dante, whispering to them without looking away from Cassetti. Well, Faust at least made it clear that boarding Mephistopheles re-established that connection, and this definitely caught Dante's attention. They then asked if she knew that this would work. Faust didn't, as she said this was a pure, incalculable gamble, which was far from certain to succeed. That success helped her somewhat comprehend Roger's fascination with gambling. She had a faint smile before it faded away. Now that the connection has been re-established, she wanted to make a complaint against the Faust and the Gesellschaft management regarding the fact that they neglected to list the information pertaining to the loss of connection within the interiors of the warp train. Seriously, Faust? You're in the middle of a negotiation with a blood fiend, and you're complaining about being kept in the dark? This is something that's likely to wait until after this is dealt with. Faust understood that she needed to get back on track with the higher priority issue, although she suspects that the omission was done on purpose, hoping this to be not the case. She then advanced towards the blood fiend. Yes, she then asked for the details of the compromise. What was Cassetti willing to accept in order to return the master keycard? Cassetti made it clear that if it was just anyone, he'd have turned them all into blood bags and drank them dry, but they're not that common. He wants to maintain the secrecy of his kingdom for as long as possible, and he understood that they wished to leave that place. Once he gave them the master keycard back, and they return to their first-class seats, they'll continue as if nothing happened. When they get off the train, everything goes back to how it was when they boarded it. Faust understood what this would mean. Dante reminded Faust of the job that they were there to complete. Faust made it clear that their memories and any signs of battle will be entirely erased upon their arrival. They'll have no way to relay their news, whether it be success or failure. If they had the means to defeat him, at least W Corp would inform them that the contract was successful after they arrived. However, they'll have nothing to show for it, not even a hint, and the contract will end in failure. But Dante and the Damned Dozen's psychological stability takes priority. Dante thought about this. This wasn't their first failure. That was something that they could live with, but they asked about the passengers on the train and any future passengers. Dante remembering the look on Don Quixote's face. Yes. Don Quixote's face whenever they'd come across forms of injustice that can't be avoided. Faust didn't reply, yet this told Dante all that they needed to know. Dante asked if they're just going to let them die, understanding that innocent lives would be lost, but their lives couldn't be, well, prioritized over their safety. Believing this to be Faust's and Limbus Company's policy, and yet Don Quixote didn't get that memo. Clearly not, as she didn't want to allow this, much to the surprise of Dante. Her wounds weren't severe enough to prevent her from walking, willpower's making her capable of doing more than just crawling, overcoming the pain to reach the freight car. She would not tolerate this, not willing to let Cassetti live and turn a blind eye to everything that he's done. This was irritating to Cassetti, asking the blonde lunatic if she wants to stay in the warp train for centuries. He knows that everything hinges on the master keycard. As soon as he breaks it, they'll spend a considerable amount of time inside. Don Quixote doesn't give a she would welcome this if it means he receives penance. It's better for her, or rather better to her, than letting his actions go unanswered, declaring that sight to be of his eternal judgment. Dante and Faust had to grab her to stop her from proceeding. Only her injured state was preventing her from breaking free. Something that she'd be able to do so at full strength, but she pushed herself beyond her limits just getting there. Don Quixote told Faust and Dante to let her go. She can't let Cassetti live. Dante reminding her nervously that letting him destroy the master keycard means that they'll be condemning them to thousands of years of torment. Don Quixote offered to fill that time with everything that she's read in her magazines. Yeah, that will really help the centuries fly past. Faust made it clear that Don Quixote's suggestion was no solution at all. Don Quixote asked if there was another way, believing that they both know more than she does. Is there not another way to bring justice to Cassetti and letting the others remain unharmed? Faust was silent. It was clear to Don Quixote that this was a hopeless situation. She was dejected. Then Dante warned her not to do what she was going to do. They failed to notice that Cassetti was quietly advancing at them. They let Don Quixote go at the last second. A second too late. He then spoke of the fifth kindred, asking him to forgive his transgressions of creating another without their sanction. Clearly a kindred needs the permission of the one directly above them to make more of their kind. Cassetti would make Don Quixote his next kindred, much to her terror. Then Cassetti screamed incoherently as he leapt towards Don Quixote, piercing her neck with his fangs, before they even had a chance to do anything. Dante didn't know what to make of this. Faust didn't even expect this to be the solution. Dante wanted her to explain what she meant by the solution. Faust explained that according to what she's viewed in the past and once again just now, it's... She then warned Dante to take cover behind her and remain absolutely still, asking them not to reveal a single word of what's about to happen. Then before Faust could finish, Don Quixote levitated into the air, the strings on her shoes unraveling as they slipped off her feet on their own, her shoes falling to the floor, and she let out a loud scream, crying out for Rocinante. Dante wanted to know, and then they remembered the question that they asked Don Quixote before they arrived at the warp train station in District 20. Why was she so protective of her running shoes? She understood that to mean Rocinante. Dante confirming this. She told them that she's battled pretty much everywhere with Rocinante, no matter how trying the times, seeing her shoes as a loyal steed by her side, for as long as she's existed. Dante understood enough to know that she doesn't know how she got those shoes. Then she asked them if they've ever saluted Rocinante as well. It was a good time to do so. Dante was good. Don Quixote joyously encouraged them to go ahead. Charon thought that they looked stinky. That small girl was torturing TikTok with stinky. I guess Charon has some standards regarding Dante. Don Quixote objected to this. They might appear scuffed, but Rocinante is in prime condition. Well, she didn't appreciate being addressed as small but Charon apparently found them to be so bad that she shouted out, "Evacuate! Evacuate!" Anyone who gets that reference is a nerd. And I approve of them. Don't ever change. Oh wait, I can talk. A little later, during one of Don Quixote's consultation sessions, Dante asks why she sleeps with Rocinante, clearly humouring the mad person. She clearly appreciates that Dante cares to ask how Rocinante fares. Dante asked this based on eyewitness reports from the others who saw her wandering in her pajamas and still wearing Rocinante. She told them that she and Rocinante are bound together, even in slumber. There's no separating the two of them. They are bound not by need nor want, they are simply bound together by plight and delights. Dante recalled that every identity that Don Quixote had also wore those shoes. Dante then asked if she ever took them off. This confused Don Quixote. Detach Rocinante from her body? She saw this as odd, an inconceivable idea to her. To her, they were more than just a pair of running shoes. It seems so far removed from common sense, but to her, it seemed ordinary. What does it mean to her, or rather, what is it? Then back in the present, an overwhelmingly powerful pressure suddenly exploded, radiating in all directions, the metallic stench of blood suffocating them, filling every corner with its sickening horror, then darkness. Cassetti was scared, seeing this as impossible, as glowing red eyes appeared in the dark. Then it was revealed that Don Quixote was a blood fiend all this time, the shoes acting as a combination of things. A limiter to suppress her true power, a means to suppress her true nature, which allowed her to pass for human, and it also suppressed her true memory, creating a false identity of an insane and delusional person, so that no one would suspect her. and it clearly worked. It also explains her Zayn Egio, which translates as the blood of Sancho, which causes bleed, and has a 50% chance to heal 50% of the damage dealt. It also grants a passive of 3 HP being healed if the target has bleed when hit. Just what you would expect from a bloodsucker like her. And it gets worse as Cassetti realised that she was a second kindred, so she's a lot older than she looks. Certainly older than Cassetti. He doesn't know why he couldn't feel her presence. Dante didn't get a good view of what she looked like, but they saw a faint outline of an aura, a red aura, and a long fur adornment of sorts, along with red eyes. Don Quixote was not happy with Cassetti. She said in a low, imposing voice that he committed the sin of impiety towards his family. He was a lesser being to her. Now it was Cassetti that was kneeling and trembling, looking pathetic. He begged his venerated ancestor for mercy. Don Quixote saw him as insolent. She formed crimson droplets around Cassetti's mouth, before congealing and sealing his mouth shut. She didn't see his words worth speaking out of his mouth. Thankfully, he didn't decide to give her the finger. She'd probably make it boil away, based on what we've seen so far. Apparently, to commit this sin by attempting to travel against the bloodstream, to commit such an abomination against his ancestor, she can't allow him to continue existing. Cassetti struggled to speak, but the blood gag prevented anything from coming out. She told him to coagulate and melt away, which he did quicker than the Wicked Witch of the West after being out in the open in India during the monsoon season. He became a slick stream of blood, making his body curdle and crumble until all that was left was a pool of unrecognizable red mass. Dante compared it to the ice cream that Don Quixote loved, although this was as if it was melted under the sun. I doubt that the blonde lunatic version of Don Quixote would want the ice cream in District 23, as that's probably the kind that would attract blood fiends. And the worst part of that would be they'd not stand out eating that, as there were a lot of cannibals in that district. Yeah, Don Quixote's blood fiend self would certainly feast on that. After that, Dante wasn't sure of what would happen next. Then Don Quixote spoke to them. Dante was still thrown back by the shockwave of Don Quixote unleashing her true power. She had a cryptic look of pity, considering that they experienced the pain of those that have been brought back to life and healed, seeing Dante as the promised timepiece. She called Rocinante to her. Dante carefully reached out and grabbed her shoes and slipped them onto her feet, one by one. Before the limiters and suppressors took effect, she said, "One day." Then they kicked in, she gasped, stumbled and slumped to the ground. She was out cold. Clearly she wanted to maintain her cover. That, and I suspect that under normal circumstances, she's not allowed to fight as a blood fiend. Either that, or she understands the need to pass for human, largely to avoid attracting the attention of first kindred blood fiend. fiends, as she might be high-ranked as far as they're concerned, but even she isn't above their rules. Now, the first kindreds, they're either those who have visited the mansion of Nosferatu and were the first to become blood fiends, or the first kindred is Nosferatu, although I'm thinking the former is more likely. Yeah, it's also because there are some, Virgilius included, that's likely to not want to trash Limbus Company's reputation by having a blood fiend, or rather the knowledge that a blood fiend is part of their employ, as in one that they're sometimes hired to hunt down, as that sounds like a conflict of interest, doesn't it, when put in that way? Also, kindred is another term used in that World of Darkness game, Vampire the Masquerade. Again, I ask, how did they get away with that legally? Sorry, I couldn't ignore that. I'll finish this bit off in the next part. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!